Keep up to date everywhere. News Talk 820 WBAP.
In the WBAP newsroom,
Byron Henry joins us right now, legal expert that we turn to in times like this to kind of get a feel for where Donald may look when it comes to the Supreme Court. One name that's been mentioned a bunch, Byron, is Ted Cruz, a guy that obviously he sparred with in the primaries. Could Ted Cruz actually be on Donald's short list?
Well, Donald Trump has released a list of judges that he said, the second part of the list he released in September said that the judge will come from that list, and he's not on that list. Now, we know that there may be some flexibility on that, but it's possible that Ted Cruz, I mean, as far as qualifications, could he be on the Supreme Court? It's possible, but one of Ted Cruz's allies in the Senate, Senator Mike Lee, was on the short list, so Donald Trump obviously wasn't against putting a sitting senator on the list, but Ted Cruz hasn't appeared on any list, and besides just speculation and rumors, there's no solid evidence that he is being considered.
Is there a litmus test? We've heard that before when it comes to the Supreme Court. Do you think Donald has a litmus test for his judges?
Well, based on the list he's put out, which basically come from a cross-section of America, especially the heartland, a lot of that flyover country that was overlooked a little bit in this year's election, from the middle of the country, it doesn't seem to be much of a litmus test, as if a lot of them are considered conservatives, they're considered originalists. Some of them clerked for Justice Thomas, some of them clerked for Justice Scalia. And so far, this list represents a very respected but conservative judges that are sitting, except for Mike Lee, who's a senator, either on Supreme Courts across the country, state Supreme Courts, or circuit courts of appeals, including our own Justice Don Willett that sits on the Texas Supreme Court down in Austin.
How can you call a guy, Ted Cruz, how can you call him Lion Ted for months and then say, boy, he'll be a great Supreme Court justice?
I think you could ask that question and just put a blank where he says Lion Ted for just about half the people that may or may not be involved in coming to Washington. I know he has some of his opponents that are actually either going to be in his administration or working on his transition team. So I suspect it's sort of the thing is that was the primary or that was the campaign. Bygones be bygones, and let's not look back but look forward is the line I think you're going to get. But I get your point. There was some pretty harsh words exchanged, so it seems very unlikely that he'll be shaking hands at the White House appointing Ted Cruz or any of those types of enemies to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and we need to be clear. Donald hasn't mentioned Ted Cruz as a potential Supreme Court justice. That has come from Lindsey Graham and others, right?
That's correct. They might like to see Ted Cruz on the Supreme Court, as a lot of conservatives might. But secondly, and more importantly, Ted Cruz hasn't expressed any interest in being on the Supreme Court either. Now, that would change, of course, if the president-elect, then president, asked him to be on the Supreme Court. But you're exactly right. There's nothing from the Trump camp or the Cruz camp about him being on the Supreme Court.
All right, Byron Henry, always appreciate the insight.